Kudzai, and I want to speak to you all today about mental health. I will also hopefully be a part of destroying the very selfish stigma surrounding it. I think that it is essential to start this talk off by asking everybody sat here to sit with an open mind, to try really hard to think about the things being spoken about today. I want everyone here to not only gain some knowledge about mental health, but to leave here with new thoughts and insights, new ideas that could have a huge and very positive impact on somebody else's life. Okay, so let me start you off with this thought. Why is the brain the only organ we fail to feel sorry for? I'm sure many of you have walked past somebody with a broken foot or arm and have instantly thought about the pain and the suffering that that person may have had to endure. I'm also very sure that many of you have, out of complete curiosity, wondered about how someone's physical health is. But how many times have you gone over to somebody to ask about how their mental health is? The answer to that question is probably not very many times. It doesn't take a genius to work out why so many don't get the concept of mental health, because I'm no genius, but I assume that I have the answer. The thing that people struggle to understand is how something that is almost invisible to the human eye can affect and destroy someone internally, can engulf them into a very dark place where escape never seems like an option. Another possible reason is because maybe people look at the word mental and instantly assume that the sufferer is crazy or weird. But what if I told you that 1 in 4 of us in the UK will experience a mental health problem in any given year? Do you know how many people that really is? Well, in the audience sat here, that would be around 25 people. And out of that 25, I can guarantee you that you would never ever be able to pick out the numbers. Your mental health is something that shouldn't define you at all. We all have it. We all have mental health as we do physical health. Your physical health could be at an astounding level, but your mental health could be at the opposite side of the spectrum. Take David Beckham, for example, an extremely fit and physically healthy, well-known ex-footballer. In 2006, he spoke about his battle with OCD, or obsessive-compulsive disorder, and pointed out how he hasn't yet managed to beat it. I would like to, I have tried, but I can't stop, he added. He later spoke about how his wife calls him a weirdo, which shows how a lot of us, even those close to us, don't get about mental health. Now, I know that I earlier spoke about mental illness being invisible to some extent, but that isn't entirely true. Sorry for confusing you. A mental illness, such as anxiety, can have uncomfortable impacts on your physical health and your everyday life, such as a pounding heart rate, feeling breathless, shaky, nauseous, lightheaded and weak. This can sometimes be known as a panic attack if the symptoms are persistent for a long enough time. I am aware of the image we all get when someone mentions the word panic attack, the terrible image usually portrayed on cartoons with that person flapping about and acting hysterical. This is what we're forced to believe. The easiest way that I can demonstrate what a panic attack feels like is probably by using a red balloon, the red signifying danger and worry, and the balloon being your head, not literally. Over time, the thoughts and the feelings that have taken over you have nowhere to go anymore. You have spent so much time trying to be strong by holding back every single ounce of emotion that had, in my case, been force-fed down my throat by the torment or by the people around me. The words and the actions that have been aimed straight at your heart are now there, and every single little nasty thing that has ever been said to you now seems believable. You're completely overwhelmed by this. You feel like a failure and like a weirdo because nobody understands you. You feel like everyone's now staring and feel as exposed to the world as you would do if you were standing on that big red cross waiting to be told yes or no by Simon Cowell. You notice yourself getting really warm and can feel your armpits tingle with the sweat that will make you feel even more uncomfortable in a few moments' time. Your heart rate accelerates like a Formula 1 car. You wonder what is going on. You feel like you're about to pass out. That thought scares you. If almost on cue, you become breathless and can't seem to understand why inhaling the oxygen all around you is so hard. You begin to feel lightheaded as a result of the accumulation of CO2 in your system due to you hyperventilating. You're terrified now. You feel like your heart's in your ears and all you can focus on is how fast your pulse is. This makes you worry that you're about to die. You start shaking because you're terrified and the unwanted wave of nausea washes through your entire system, threatening you like a tsunami. Your knees start to buckle and you feel like you have no control over your body because this is what anxiety does to you. After what seems like forever, you reassure yourself that this was yet again another one of those panic attacks and go to lie down because you're now ever so startled and probably terrified that you'll get hit again. This is nothing anyone should ever have to deal with alone. Sufferers of anxiety disorders, eating disorders, childhood disorders, mood disorders, cognitive disorders, personality disorders, schizophrenia and other psychotic disorders, and substance-related disorders are all sufferers who do not want to suffer. You don't get to choose whether you're a cancer sufferer, a diabetic, or a sufferer of an eating disorder, do you? This is why the stigma needs to be abolished, because too many sufferers of mental illness do not get the help that they need, and without that help, serious consequences do occur, like suicide. According to the Mental Health Foundation, an estimated 1 million people will die from suicide every year. That's more people dying from suicide than wars and natural disasters combined. Is that fair? 1 million, that's one death every 40 seconds. Think about the amount of people you walk past every single day on the streets, the people who you pass by, say hello to, or sit next to on the train. Those people could soon become a part of that statistic if not enough awareness is raised. How would you feel if you knew somebody that you cared very much about was struggling with their mental health? From the research that I have done and from the people I have spoken to, the majority of the people who attempt suicide and fail said that their reasons for it weren't exactly because they wanted to die. It was because they didn't want to live with the pain and the suffering that came over them every day. If we could save so many lives every year by raising awareness so that there wouldn't be so much of a stigma and many would feel more comfortable speaking up about how they felt, then how amazing would that be? Knowing that you have made so much of an impact on someone else's life is quite possibly one of the best feelings that you could ever feel. We could have more peer providers and free online resources for those who are wanting the help but struggle to speak up about their issues face to face. We could also have certain days or lessons dedicated at school to learning about mental health, because the earlier we learn about these issues, the better. Following up from what I mentioned earlier, I think that it is fair to say that we can all relate to mental illness, because nobody's health, mental and or physical, is ever going to be 100% perfect. I am overly certain that you know at least 4 people, so being able to relate can mean knowing and understanding somebody who is suffering from a mental health and illness. This could affect you personally too. Imagine how you felt before doing something you have absolutely dreaded, like apologising to a close friend or relative, standing up on stage and performing, or taking an all-important exam which probably terrified you more than the things mentioned before. Those are all things that get your heart pumping fast and your thoughts tangled up because you're overthinking, and this happens when you're nervous. The physical aspects to the anxiety created aren't as obvious as a broken arm, but you would still be able to understand and would ultimately be able to sympathise. Of course, you wouldn't be able to say to an anxiety sufferer that you knew exactly how they felt, because we all go through things very differently and feel very differently from each other. However, you could use the experience as a guidance to understanding and sympathising with somebody who needs your help, because guess what? Currently, there are too many people out there who do. During my talk, at least 20 people will have committed suicide. I think it's important that we grasp how huge this issue really is. Guys, battling through anything is never going to be easy, but please remember that you can make it through, because there is always a light at the end of every tunnel. On the 19th of June, 2013, I had my first panic attack. I was sat in form, staring at the bold hands on the clock at the front of the classroom, moving perfect motion. Tick-tock, they went. It was a Wednesday, and I had a piano lesson on after school. I remember the day being very warm, and obviously spending a lot of it outside, because the weather here isn't always that great. The heavy wooden classroom door stood before my form and I, and as soon as the second bell rang, my form tutor came over to lead us and greet us all in. As the door opened, the heat tumbled out and hit me straight in the gut. I gasped for air as I took the first step into my now anxiety-driven life. I was going to hobble out of this room as a completely different 13-year-old girl, but I didn't know that yet. I made my way to the back of the class and sat down next to my friend. However, she had to leave for her music lesson, and after she did, I began to panic. I felt alone, isolated and secluded. If I wasn't the one calming my nerves down, then what was I to do? I was done. I asked to move because I felt like my brain was burning up. I couldn't hear myself think. The voices played over and over in my mind, and I couldn't sit still. I wasn't allowed to move though, and then that was it. That was when it all started. The attack lasted about 2 minutes, but those were the longest 2 minutes of my life. I was forced to remain seated, as I knew that getting up and running out of the room would have directed more attention to me than if I was to have just pretended that nothing was the matter. I felt completely trapped. My hands began to tingle, and everything around me seemed to be getting closer and closer. I felt like I was being suffocated by a plastic bag and could taste the bitter anxiety bubbling up from inside me. I asked myself what was happening, but I couldn't answer. I could see the world around me continue as normal. Everybody was okay, but I wasn't. I was in a mess. My brain had fallen out. My heart had dropped 10,000 feet, and the air around me grew thick and grey. I was having my first panic attack. Later on that day, I remember coming back from school and getting into my mum's car, telling her all about it. "Mama," I said, terribly shaken with what had happened to me about an hour and a half prior to this moment. "Oui, ma petite poule," or "yes, my little chicken," she answered sympathetically, and I recalled the moment, the attack playing to such perfect detail in my mind. I told her about how awful I felt, and after my piano lesson, we went straight to the doctor's. After waiting there for some time and eventually being seen, I got sent back with the idea that I was almost passing out, which clearly wasn't right. I knew how different both of these feelings felt from each other, so I refused to go with the one opinion. But after about 5 more doctor's visits, about 20 grueling panic attacks, an ECG scan and a blood test, I was told that there was nothing more that could be done. It was like missing the flight that you'd been waiting for hours. I felt stranded with the idea that this was to now become my life. I now lived with the fear of never making it through. I had lost the hope that had once been planted firmly in me for the people that I trusted most, for the doctors who were meant to diagnose me correctly, and for the classmates who were sat around me, probably judging the fact that I now had no control over myself. None of them helped me. Soon, even those close to me passed this off as being some pathetic and meaningless ordeal, and I was forced to deal with this alone. So I took matters into my own hands and started searching. I searched for the answers that I should have received months before then. The day that I discovered that I wasn't, in fact, dying from some terrible disease was probably one of the most stress-relieving days to date. I now realised that I was suffering from panic attacks, all revolving around anxiety. And so I worked really hard on myself, forcing the demons out and dragging the angels in. I pushed myself towards the things that I feared most, and began asking myself questions when out, such as, what's the worst thing that could possibly happen here? I was also making sure that my breathing was fixed. I spent months reflecting, reading about this illness, watching many highly recommended YouTube videos, and keeping a diary, which gives me great pleasure in reading now because you know what? I have made it. I'm presenting my TEDx talk to all of you about something that I never spoke about before because I was ashamed. I was told that I was a liar, an attention seeker, and somebody who should sit and think about how lucky I was to be breathing, how lucky I was compared to somebody suffering from a physical illness that we could all sympathise with. I was made to believe that mental illness is something that only the weak struggle with, but it really isn't. We all struggle with it, and not a single one of you out there is weak. I'm doing the things that I thought I would never be able to do because I was once terrified of the world. I was disturbed by those ass-kicking bullies, by the strangers on the streets who laughed and pointed at my big hair, and by the people who made me feel worthless and hopeless, calling me every word under the sun and chucking me around the place emotionally like I was some unloved ragdoll. I'm here now because there is more to life than the things that people say make us who we are. You must refuse to let those things win because you're greater than that stereotype. You're more than capable of doing absolutely anything you have ever dreamt of doing, and will end up accomplishing all if you believe. Believing in the fact that you can and having the confidence in yourself will work wonders for you, I promise, and so will speaking up. Don't ever suffer in silence. And well, I'm ultimately here to tell you that mental illness is not a joke and that we, as united and amazing individuals, need to take this all more seriously because there are people out there everywhere who are suffering and you could most certainly be the light at the end of their tunnel. If I can make it through, then so can you. Thank you.